Coming up on this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast.
Take action. It's really, really easy to sit and plan and overanalyze and overprepare. At the end of the day, half-assed plan that is acted on is much better than a perfect plan that's never acted on.
I think of everyone as a possible connection, and I had that mentality, and we were able to build millions through that mentality. Microsoft makes 80% of the revenue through partnerships. Everyone in the software game does it all through partnerships.
Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
Being a solo recruiter is hard. You're out there by yourself. You're out there day after day looking to win. But here's the thing. You don't have to be by yourself when you're a solo recruiter. I'm excited to have 3 people on the podcast, and this is the first time I'm doing a 4-person episode. So bear with me, guys. But I'm excited because the group that I have on today, they are some of the best community builders when it comes to the recruiting community. These guests have helped me on my journey as a solo recruiter. And I know they've helped many, many other people. So I'm excited to have them today to talk about how you can win as a solo recruiter, how you can grow as a solo recruiter, and also like a lot of the tools that are out there. So the group that I have today, they're called the Syndicate. I have Neil, which you've heard on a recent podcast, David Stephen Patterson, which he's been a returning guest, and then brand new guest, Daniel Miller. So I just want to say welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hey, glad to be here.
Thank you.
Excited.
Yes. So we know Neil's background. We definitely know DSP's background. So make sure to go back to the episodes that they share how they ended up in the recruiting space. So we'll make this quick, Daniel. How did you end up in this wonderful world of recruiting?
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. And my start in recruiting was very different than a typical start. I got my start in high school and I was an intern and I became everyone's researcher at an MRI agency. So that was my start and I stayed there for 6+ years and built a career. So it was atypical.
You didn't even get the, hey, I saw it at college and started in recruiting.
Right. It's normally an accident. It's an accident in so many cases.
Like if you're in high school and starting at a recruiting agency, you almost chose that path. That's your destiny.
It really was. I even had to take a cab to work every day because I didn't even have my driver's license. So half my paycheck went to the cabs every week. So yeah, it was crazy back then, but I learned it all and I loved it ever since.
That is awesome. Well, definitely it's exciting to have you guys on. And first of all, I know David Stephen Patterson, DSP, has one of the biggest recruiting groups on Facebook, probably one of the biggest emailing lists too when it comes to what's happening out there. But here's the thing. You guys are starting something new. What the hell is the Syndicate?
Well, let's start here. So first off, you guys may have noticed I'm wearing my championship belt. This is for championship recruiters. A little bit of a joke here, but the great thing about being a recruiter is you buy stupid crap. And I spent $300 on this about 15 years ago. And, that's the great thing about this business. This business is fantastic because you get to have a great lifestyle. You have so much freedom. But the problem is, and for many recruiters, I'm sure have experienced this, especially if you're independent, if you're not part of a bigger organization, part of a franchise or a network, is you're on an island. I remember when I first started in the business, my first search firm, I didn't even know how to incorporate. I actually started my first search firm unincorporated because I just was half-assing it. Or not half-assing it, but I didn't know what I was doing it. I was figuring it out as I go because I was on an island. And to have a community of like-minded recruiters that you can bounce ideas off of, they can help you with your mindset, that maybe become great split partners, and as we've come to learn, great friends. Ben, you're a friend. Dan, you're a friend. Neil, great friend. And that's what we want to create with this community, is first and foremost, a community of like-minded recruiters that can come together. And of course, there's lots of other benefits as well. Neil, I can maybe have you talk a bit about that. I don't want to hog the spotlight here, but first and foremost, it's a community. Number one is a community.
Talk about these benefits. Like, I know one of the things when I first started out, I think I was like begging DSP. I was like, what's an agreement look like?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Ben. What we wanted to create was not just a community where you can speak your mind and be off of Facebook. And some people don't like being on Facebook, which is where our biggest community is. But we wanted to have a one-stop resource center where you can go and get everything that people have been asking for and talking about all over the internet. So we have hundreds of forms and agreements and templates. In fact, one of my partners at Boss was asking for an employee handbook, and everyone's going nuts. Well, Google it, go to SHRM. I'm like, go to the Syndicate. And if you go in there and you type in a search under handbook, you'll get 4 different types of employee handbooks, hundreds of forms, 100 ebooks, great ebooks, until we get sued to take them down, live it up. Think and Grow Rich, all these amazingly well-known books, as well as proprietary books that we've curated from across the recruiting industry. Retain Search, How to Grow Your Desk. So it's one-stop shopping for all of this and a lot more.
And also fun. I'm a big fan that if you're trying to create a community, and by the way, I'm not talking about just the recruiter community, but as a recruiter, if you're getting clients and candidates, you have community. You've got a client community and a candidate community, right? And you need to share value, build authority, share content. Yeah, it's not just about making placements, right? You have to plant seeds that'll eventually grow, right? That you can then harvest. But the problem is recruiters can be very dry, right? When they put out content, top 7 hiring mistakes and yada, yada. And there's a million of those things out there and no one notices it. So a big part of this, you have to be entertaining. You have to have fun. If you're entertaining, people stick around for the education, for the value, and then they start to trust you and then they want to do business with you. That's a big part of it. And so in the Syndicate, one thing that I'm very proud of is that we try to make it like Narnia, right? You step through the wardrobe and you don't know what you're going to see. And you step through, and in this is a magical land full of free agreements, forms, training, community. There's public forums. We have a place called the Tavern where you can go have a little happy hour with your friends. We have Meme Mountain where we share recruiting memes, right? Just so we can have some fun. So it's not dry. It's not boring. We want to make it a fun environment that's also helpful. As an example, just a couple of days ago, I don't want to see who the person is, but I'm reading this. We had somebody post in the group, help, please. I'm about to make a placement with my normal 30-day terms. My client insists on a 90-day guarantee and make the payment on day 90. What do I do? And we already have people responding, giving him some valuable advice. Now he can go back and negotiate that with his client. I wish I had that when I was younger, trying to figure this stuff out, plus a place where I can just go and have some fun and hang out, have a nice hang with my friends. So I think it's a big part. It's not just the value. It's not just the community, not just the training. There's a lot of training in there, but it's also a fun place to go. It's almost like a safe haven, if you will, right?
And you know what, Ben, the only thing I just want to add, and I'm going to be quiet, is some people have said the Syndicate, that's a scary name, and they think of the mob. What the Syndicate really is in business school is a collaboration among people that share a very similar audience that have very different goals. So you get to create a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. And the reason it's there for free, and people are like, well, what's the catch? Listen, it's an ongoing branding for the three of us. We each have different audiences. I mean, same audience, but different purposes. David's the trainer. He wants to reach out to people who want training. They'll buy his boot camps and all the other stuff. If not, they're just going to know who he is as a trainer, as a thought leader. I've got Boss, back office staffing solutions, as the employer of record. I'm the back office side to it if people want it. And Daniel is Recruiter PM, which is the front office side. And Daniel and I API together, and we create with David a full ecosystem, if you will, for everything that you need in staffing and recruiting.
And real quick, I had Daniel at the AI Summit, but for the listeners real quick, what is Recruiter PM?
Recruiter PM is essentially an all-in-one platform, ATS CRM, and 30 other apps all built into one platform. So you don't need an app marketplace anymore to do, your job as a manager of running your agency or recruiter. No matter your role in an agency, this software has everything built into one place to make it easier, not have to essentially question, what app do I need next, right? So it's kind of one ecosystem.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited that you guys all came together, but one of the biggest things I'm excited about chatting with you guys about, you guys talk to hundreds and thousands of recruiters on a yearly basis. I want to know, how the fuck are they winning? So we're going to do a deep dive into what's working right now, in this weird market. Cause I know DSP talked about it for a long time, during the heydays, the golden era of recruiting was going to come to an end. And for many industries, it did come to an end. So what the hell is working right now for recruiters winning?
Okay, I'll take this one. This is my area. Being aggressive. So I think what's old is new is old. So what I mean by that is you basically have available to you in terms of channels of communication. You have LinkedIn, email, good old cold calls, right? Again, what's old is new again. If people aren't making cold calls, they start making cold calls. Direct mail. We also have things like video, texting. And so, in my opinion, you need to get out and use as many channels as humanly possible. So they say that it takes 10 to 12 touches to get in front of a prospect. Who knows what the number is? That's just kind of a good rubric or rule of thumb. But it doesn't mean cold call 1, cold call 2, cold call 3, or it doesn't mean email 1, email 2. It means they see a post on LinkedIn over here, they get an email from me over here, voicemail from me over here, they see you at a conference over here, email over here, LinkedIn over here, and over time they build a picture of who you are. This is a very low trust environment, right? And so if everybody is out there saying, hey, we find the best candidates, hey, we find the best people, we have the most experience, we're the specialists, we're all saying the same thing. Literally every single recruiter finds the best candidates. We all say it. It's completely low trust. So it's all about relationships. But how do you build the relationships if everybody's reaching out to everybody else saying the same things? So it's consistency, using multiple channels to get in front of people, being very consistent, and finding ways to demonstrate that you actually do find better people. So if you don't mind, I'm going to dive a little bit further into that if you don't mind here, but I think this is pretty valuable. So if you're reaching out, again, you're doing multiple channels, LinkedIn, email, phone, right? Now that's great. Then you think about, okay, what message am I delivering that demonstrates that I find the best people? Because again, everybody says the same shit all the time. I find the best people. So what can you do to demonstrate that? Here are a few little tidbits. Use some differentiating stats. Now, granted, people can make these up, but look, at the end of the day, it's better than nothing. 80% of all of our placements are retained after 2 years, as an example, right? Clients like that. We don't waste your time with frivolous candidates. 80% of all of our candidates that we submit are interviewed. Like, we don't waste your time. We're on target, as an example.
David, this reminds me of, just really fast, sorry to interrupt, but
sure.
you know that 93.856% of trainers make up statistics to prove their point?
That's very true. Like I said, hey, don't, but it's better than that. And it does help. It does help. So that's statistics. So things like that. You can also look at guarantees. What 1 year replacement guarantee for engaged clients? If you're willing to make a money down deposit, could be one. I have a couple of clients that do a 2-year guarantee. Now, granted, some people will spit up their coffee when they hear that, but at the end of the day, Apple has Apple Care for a reason. I spend $200 or however much I spend every time I buy a new iPhone for Apple Care, because I want the peace of mind. I don't want to drop my phone on a pavement somewhere and the Apple genius says, well, sir, it's not our responsibility. We're not an insurance company. No, I want a new phone. Give me the new phone. I want to go about my business. So offering peace of mind, that could be one. Another one is testimonials. Get LinkedIn recommendations from your clients and candidates, right? And then take those and put that maybe in your messaging. Maybe you're in your first initial pitch, have a PS. PSs are the most read parts of any email, or the second or third most read part. PS, if you're not sure if we get the job done for you, check out what that client has to say about it work and put the testimonial right there in the message. Social proof, that's another one. Case studies for your clients, that's another one. And then I think one of the ultimate ways to show value, and I'll kind of leave it at this, is NPCs. For those who don't know, most placeable candidates. Now, granted, if I'm reaching out to a prospect every month, ding, 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 and every month they get an email from me or a LinkedIn message or a voicemail or something, and I'm slowly building up trust over time, right? But let's say I have a VP level candidate who is so hot and just money and a player, yada, yada, yada. And I present that person, right? Hey, we're representing a, bullet point, sizzle, right? That demonstrates much more than anything else, the level of candidates that I have access to. So I think I'm going to kind of wrap it all up as you have to.
Certainly Oscar playing music now when people do their 20-minute speech.
Exactly.
Start playing that music, Fed.
But this stuff is valuable. So at the end of the day, you got to prove that you're different through consistency and also finding differentiators. Stats, social proof, guarantees, NPCs. That's how you do it.
So we just talked about what's working, how you can actually be different. You guys have different data points from your guys' different parts of the recruiting world. And I want to hear this from each of you guys. What is stopping recruiters from winning in this market right now? We'll just start with you, Daniel.
I think it's twofold. And I think people are going to give me a lot of backlash on the first thing I'm going to mention, but I just want to mention it because it's so important. I think a lot of us were trained that we need to niche down, and we're so niche that we're so focused that we forget about all the jobs inside of our same clients. And we could be preventing a lot of revenue coming in. I talked to a lot of recruiters using the software, and they start saying yes to some of their clients in their other departments, and they start seeing more revenue coming in. It's an instant revenue generator the minute they take their niche and start saying yes to more roles within their niche. So I see that being an opportunity where a lot of recruiters are opening up their niches a little bit more than they used to, at least the ones I'm working with. And then, I would say too is you make so much on a hire, 15, 20, 30,000. Don't be cheap on resources. You need certain resources. You need Indeed resume search. No one talks about it. You need it. LinkedIn Recruiter, it works. I can go on and on, but certain resources you do need to be successful in certain industries. And the minute the boss or the manager or whatever takes it away, you'll need like a seek out, hire. You'll need some type of thing to replace those major resources, because whether we like it or not, LinkedIn and Indeed has taken over the whole market of employment, and we have to kind of, use those resources as best as possible. So these are two things I keep saying over and over again. And I think it's really on Indeed and LinkedIn to help us and the world of technology in HR integrate better. So recruiters that are messaging on Indeed and another recruiter's messaging in the ATS, everyone's coordinating better too. But again, their successes, when I look at the stats and where their revenue is coming from inside of our backend, it's Indeed and LinkedIn Recruiter time and time again. So I know, we need to start investing in the resources sometimes that maybe we don't want to invest in. Those are two things I keep saying.
I want to add to that as well. I think that's a big part of it. I think there's a big part of it is mindset in different ways. Some people have the mindset where, like, for example, they're not aggressive enough. They don't have the confidence. That could be one. They don't have the confidence to cold call, or they don't have the confidence, or they're too good to cold call, or I don't need a script. I already know how to do this, and they kind of fall into their old habits, or they get so much referral business for such a long time. They think, well, I just work by referrals. Okay, so your clients do your selling for you. And then when that stops, they're kind of stuck and they're afraid to actually break out of this like box that they put themselves in. So there's a lot of mindset issues too, I think, whether it's keeping them in a box or making them kind of feel lazy or whatever it is. I think that imagine your first day in the business when you're handed a phone and you're told just to go talk to people. Talk. What happened? You got clients, you got candidates, you made deals happen, right? People get stuck in their head and they forget that simple principle is find ways to communicate and just be in the market, be aggressive, always ask for business. I think that mindset's a big issue that's keeping people from being successful in this market.
People don't maximize their inventory, and you don't need to in an unbelievable market when everything's coming, although you should. So what do you do with these 95.8%, making up that number, of people that you're not placing? So, for example, are you doing coaching? A lot of people get into doing coaching, doing some, real advanced resume help. Are you sourcing every single person for job leads? Are you doing that like you used to have to do? Are you getting the names of people they have? Are you really going in a level to the side, lateral on LinkedIn and finding great new prospective candidates? Are you taking advantage of them? And this is self-serving, but not really. Are you looking to place unemployed people as temporary workers? So many of them could be used as temp, and so many people that I see don't touch it, and they're afraid of it. And we have partners that make $500,000-$600,000 for real in extra income by having a great contracting book of business with it. So you need to really maximize your audience, podcasts, to your candidates.
We focus on mindset. We focus on maximizing things, and we focus on being too niche. But I think that's what all circles down to somebody's identity. We've spent years building out an identity within the recruiting space, whether we're an internal recruiter, whether we're an agency recruiter, whether we're niche down in our own. And, just the way the world's changing, how do you change your fundamental identity to help prepare yourself to go win in the recruiting world?
That's a tough one. I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like going to AA. You have to hit rock bottom. I think you have to, and not for all people, right? But for a lot of people, they don't change until they have a year where they have the worst slump of their career, or all the legacy clients go away and they have to have that come to Jesus moment with themselves or their wife or their husband or their business partner or whatever it is. And I think people need something drastic or something negative to happen to them in order for them to get up and make a change. I mean, there's some people who never get in shape until the doctor tells them that they have heart issues or that they may not live to see their grandson's birthday, whatever it is. And then they finally make that change. So I think for a lot of folks, they need something to smack them in the face to actually make a change. But I think for others that are maybe a little bit not luckier, but have the advantage of being able to recognize things before things come to a head, right? But I think a lot of it also comes back to community. If you're in a community that's supportive, to bring it back to the Syndicate, if you're in a community that's supportive, or let's say in a community where you see other people hitting a brick wall and it serves as a warning, so to speak. But before you hit that brick wall or hit that rock bottom, they can help too. So I think community is a big part of it. But I think a lot of people just really need to hit a brick wall before they make a change. Unfortunately, it's just how we're wired.
Another question I wanted to ask you guys, just because I'm seeing this a lot in the marketplace, there's a lot of internal recruiters that have been let go and laid off. Like they're struggling to actually go find another job. How do they transition into their own agency?
I'll say, I see so many of them on the groups that go out and want to know how to open their own agency, or go right out and open their own agency, thinking the leap is that simple. Because it has a similar root word, recruiting, it's totally different. Everyone out there that does it knows how different it is in terms of the sales aspect of it, and really what you need to do, and how everything rides on one deal or one prep. And all these elements haven't been trained on. So for the love of God, try to get a position. It's not necessarily easy for that reason, but get a position where you can be trained, where you can learn by osmosis from people and figure out how to do it the right way. If not, the failure rate is super high.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because really, if you go from internal to external and you start your own agency, it's a splash cold water on the face, and they realize that they have to sell. And they have to go out and compete against a ton of other recruiters. There's so much white noise out there, and get a company to agree to work with you. Like maybe, and I know some folks, when they start, they already have contacts, so it's a little bit easier. So they already have maybe some existing business they can tap into. But even with those folks, that does go away. You have to learn how to, just like dating, right? It's just dating. When you've been married for 20 years, and then you find yourself on the dating scene. Well, you can go use Tinder, you can use Match and all that kind of stuff. And in that, you can have some success there. But ultimately, you have to have the ability to go and just walk up to somebody that you're interested in, potentially, that's attractive to you, and find a way to broach the conversation, be interesting, be funny, not be weird, which is a big one. Don't be weird. Don't be weird, right? And then baby step things and see if there's some mutual interest. And if not, then move on and keep doing that and build basically a social circle. I know people who have been divorced, men who've been divorced after 20 some years, and they've had to go build a social circle from scratch. And they can do it. It takes a lot of work. But you have to be willing to go out there and get the bruises, hear the no's, the rejections, the awkwardness, the late nights, and eventually you build the best skill set of being social, being funny, being well known. And then, right, so the same way you build a social circle, right, in so much same ways, is the same way you go out and build a network of people who want to work with you, with their clients and candidates. But again, it's clients, that's the main thing. They pay the bills, not the candidates, right? It's easy to get candidates. It really is. All right. And fight me if you disagree with me. I'll fight all day long. It's all about the clients. All about the clients. If you get clients, candidates will come. Right. So getting the skill set to go find clients. And so ultimately, how do you do it? Join one of my boot camps and I'll show you how. So there you go.
I mean, that's how I started.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk also about changing industries. Like, I know during the heydays that we had a few years ago, everything was rocking and rolling, or at least a lot of spaces. But now, like, there are industries that recruiting's hard in, and it looks like with the incoming of artificial intelligence, it's going to potentially get even harder. With AI replacing not only, some recruiters, but also like the positions recruiters are working on. And this also kind of ties back into identity. Like when you are in a niche, that's part of who you are. How do you start looking at pivoting to a new industry or a new niche as a recruiter?
Talk to people in the industry. I've switched industries a couple of times when I first got into search. I started off in staffing. I worked for a day labor company initially in 97, then Kelly Services. I staffed a call center for a while. But I learned search the MRI, and my first day they told me, you're going to recruit property and casualty commercial underwriters. And I said, what's an underwriter? They said, call all these resumes and you'll figure it out. Now, granted, you still want to research the industry, but the best way to find out is start talking to as many candidates as you can, because they'll take your call. And learn, find out what they're doing, find out what companies are hiring, what trends are seeing in the marketplace, learn the buzzwords, the lingo, et cetera. Like that's one of the best ways to learn. Take a week or 2 weeks and talk to candidates, maybe some leaders that are on the market as well. And you'll get a really good idea of what the market really is about than doing a month of just research online and not talking to a single person. Plus, you'll probably find a good NPC. Find a good NPC and then take that person out to market. So I think for anybody who wants to work in a new industry, and by the way, I did that a couple of times. So I switched from insurance then to SAP. And same thing, I didn't know a thing about SAP, right? I thought SAP was the Spanish language, whatever thing. I had no idea until I got into it, talked to candidates. I'm like, oh, this is what it is. And then I learned it, found a couple of good NPCs, took them to market, and there you go. Yes, do your research. Yes, look at the talent reports, all that kind of jazz. But don't forget, the best possible research in the world is boots on the ground, belly to belly, plus press and flesh, talking to candidates, find some good people, taking them to market. That's the best way to find out if it's a viable niche for you or not, more than any research you could ever possibly do.
I love that, David. I want to jump over to Daniel with kind of like a question, but a different angle. Like, you're the back end and you see the data behind what recruiters do. Have you seen recruiters make pivots to new niches, and like how long data-wise it typically take for them to see the success that they had in the other industries?
I can't say from a data perspective. I can say from personal conversation, just to make this more of a real conversation. I know that a lot of times people will open up niches because an opportunity presented itself, or they saw that there was so much need, or they have people in their community, whether it be a church, a synagogue, whatever, where they know the owner, they'll give them jobs. Once you can essentially prove that your process works, no matter what industry you're in, this is my process, this is how I do it, this is the resources, and we get results, and you sell them on your process and what you do, I don't think niche matters at that point, because no matter what, we all have the same resources, we're all sending the same messages. What you knew that person a year ago, you're going to call them, they don't really, maybe they remember you, but I think that people that have switched niches, there was some type of reason that was like they got at some type of opportunity potential, or they saw an opportunity, and then they use that community to kind of bring it in. I see this through friendship relationships, or they knew someone that owned a company, they never talked to them, they opened a call, and then boom, they got all this new work. Or, hey, I know this VCPE, they own 100 companies, now I'm in 5 different industries, I don't care, I have all these, like that happened to a few of my good friends in recruiting. They became friends with VCs and PEs, and then all of a sudden they just opened the conversation. Now they never have to worry ever again. They just have hundreds of companies, depending on the month, whoever needs to hire, they come to their agency. So, switching niches and what have you through my conversations, it's so possible. It shouldn't be that big of an issue, honestly. Just like David said, you make 10 calls, 5 calls, you talk to candidates, you know everything. You put up a job post, you get applications, you talk to a few people. Those conversations will teach you enough where you can then start truly recruiting and getting it. And I don't think changing niches is that big of a deal. I really don't.
And actually that goes into the question I was going to ask Neil, like, do people overthink making a move to a new industry?
I think they do. I think they try to look at where other people in their communities or they hear are successful. And the most successful people, especially when I used to run a global business at Adecco and Agilon, is go where the clients tell you. If you're skill marketing and they say, no, we don't have this, or you have a very specific niche, and they say, but you have someone on the front office that does X, Y, Z, start thinking about that. Just go where it directs you as you talk to candidates. And if you're really sourcing where the leads are, you're going to have your answer. So don't overthink it. Go with the wind, if you will.
But I will say this as well, is just because the industry is hot doesn't mean it's a viable industry. Now, I don't know, and it may be a little bit different now, but I remember a few years ago, maybe 4 years or whatever, when cannabis is becoming legal in many states. I know quite a few people who were trying to get into cannabis, even though it was very hot. They were having some real difficulties because it was such a fragmented industry. Half the time they're talking to,
Potheads.
Yeah. And so they couldn't get traction at all, even though it was a hot industry. And so it's not just if the industry is hot necessarily, because that has to be viable. I'm sure it's viable now, but obviously anytime there's a brand new industry, there's always going to be, the industry's kind of gelling, so it may not be in a spot where they can use recruiters. That could be. And also, just because the industry is hot, well, it means everybody's also jumping in. Tech is a great example. Tech really was hot. Everybody started doing tech, and then it cooled down. And now, a lot of folks who all they did was tech, and they didn't know how to get clients because it was so easy to get clients before, and now they can't get them. And it's really oversaturated in certain areas of tech. So keep that in mind. And you can find some very profitable industries in some very boring areas. Hydraulics, construction, manufacturing, right? And they're not sexy. It's not hot, but it is sexy. A $40,000 fee, that's sexy. Sexy is $500,000 a year billing. That's pretty sexy. Now you might be doing hydraulics, whatever, but I'd rather be doing $500,000 in hydraulics than $100,000 a year in a field where everybody else, like in tech, with so much competition. So keep that in mind. Doesn't have to be sexy. It just has to be a good industry that's hiring.
Do you think people avoid those unsexy industries because it's like not cool and they're just missing potential money? Is it the not cool factor? Why is it they pick sexy over not sexy?
It's hard as hell also, these blue collar roles. I work with a few recruiting firms that only do blue collar specifically, and it's really hard to get the talent. You know, when you get them on the phone, they're on their jobs and you have to call after 5. It's a much more of a cold calling game. And I think that people in recruiting got so used to email marketing and not doing all the cold calls that some of those not so sexy industries require the cold call still. And there's a little bit of a disconnect. I just think that's happening with a lot of recruiters entering those blue collar fields.
It's part of it. I could see that for sure. And also, another thing is it's because some people may not, like, to be candid, a lot of people don't use hydraulic as an example, but a lot of people just don't know about the hydraulics industry. They're almost hidden. Like, for example, I ran, before I did SAP, when I first started with MRI, I did commercial underwriting for P&C companies. And while I was there, Lucy Wilson, who was my first mentor in the business, she's long deceased now, but she did surety bonds. So she billed, back in 2000, she would bill $300,000 to $400,000 per year, and she had done it for like 20 years prior to me coming in. So we're talking from like the 80s, 70s through, so she was old school. And it was a very small industry, surety bonds, maybe at the time less than 1,000 candidates total. Like, that's what she had told me. She was one of 2 recruiters that she knew of in the industry. And it was hidden, but she found it. It was like a little hidden piece of gold. And she was able to extract $300,000 to $400,000 working 25 hours a week every single year, year after year after year after year after year in surety bonds. Hidden industry. People just didn't know about it. Right? So I think people just don't know about it, and it's hidden.
How do you go find a hidden industry that's a gold mine?
You really have to talk to people. I think you start talking to people and look for, if you work insurance is a really broad area, right? But in insurance, you have these little sub niches. Start talking to candidates, clients, et cetera, and you'll start getting wind of what's hot or what's viable and what's not. I think really it goes back down to boots on the ground, belly to belly, pressing flesh, and talking to people. The more you talk to people and ask questions, good questions as far as who's hiring, who's not hiring, trends they see in the marketplace, et cetera, you'll start picking up things. I think talking to people really more than anything else is going to help you discover those hidden niches.
Awesome. Well, Neil, Daniel, DSP, before we jump over to the quick fire questions, I know we've kind of covered shift, pivots, identity, what's working right now, like how to market yourself, how to be different. Is there anything else you want to share when it comes to those factors?
Yeah, I think more than anything else, take action. It's really, really easy to sit and plan and overanalyze and overprepare. At the end of the day, half-assed plan that is acted on is much better than a perfect plan that's never acted on. So I think more than anything else, get a plan of action, start talking to people. All right, so make sure you're sending your emails, set your LinkedIn messages, make sure you're differentiating, and more than anything else, find any way possible to get in front of prospects, client prospects, not necessarily just candidates, but client prospects, getting out in the market more than anything else. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy. I'd rather you be messy and actually make things happen than be perfect and never make anything happen at all. So just take action.
Awesome. Daniel, anything from you?
I actually agree completely with David. I would say the same thing. I think a lot of people are so stuck in their heads that they don't actually do what they need to do. So taking action is so important. And I was going to bring this up probably later, but I think that you need to build a world around you and partnerships. I used to get tons of a business out of partnerships. They would refer me business. I'd give them 10%. Everyone became my sales team. I think of everyone as a possible connection. And I had that mentality, and we were able to build millions through that mentality. Microsoft makes 80% of the revenue through partnerships. Everyone in the software game does it all through partnerships. And we were doing some of that in the agency life, and that really helped. And I think people don't realize who they're connected to can actually help them a lot more than they ever, thought. So just throwing that out.
Oh, and join the Syndicate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say raise the bar and your mind and body will follow. I've got great examples of that. When they train an elephant at a circus for a traveling circus, how do you train this several ton creature to not destroy the entire circus? Well, they take the baby elephants, they take a pole, they dig it 20 feet deep, reinforced with concrete and rebar. And the elephant struggles and struggles and struggles and realizes very quickly that it can't do that because it won't work. And they never try again. So when they go to the traveling circus, they just take that metal pole and they, do their best to just stick it into the ground, no concrete or anything. Same thing with the 4-minute mile. People thought it was impossible till Roger Bannister broke the record. And what's amazing about that story isn't that someone did something that everyone said was impossible forever, but it's that immediately after he did it, so many other people did it. So if you raise your bar, shatter your belief expectation, your body's just going to follow. It's that true.
Yeah, actually, I want to say one more thing about that. A very important lesson I learned a long time ago, and I do not follow this as much as I should. And it's a struggle every day, right? But I think raising your standards. It's not about necessarily goals. Goals are important, but it's standards that define us. It's the standards that make sure you get up every morning and get your kids to school. Make sure they're fed. Making sure your mortgage is paid. I mean, at the end of the day, you will fight tooth and nail and claw and scrape to pay your mortgage every month. Will you not? Because that is a standard. So think about raising your standards. Just as Neil said, the 4-minute mile became a standard if you're an elite runner, elite sprinter, or whatever. I don't know. I'm not in the world of sprinting. That is considered sprinting necessarily, but in that world, 4-minute mile became kind of the standard. You had to be able to hit that, right? When it became a standard, people started hitting that more often. So raise your standards because that will define your dreams, is your standards.
I love that. And sadly, I never crossed that 4-minute mile mark. I think my fastest was really...
But you could. Not good necessarily, but one could.
What I wanted to really say after this was like, I think encompassing all this, whether you join the Syndicate or join whatever, like you need to find a community where people are out there winning or they're working on winning. Because you can easily, whoever you spend the most time with in the digital world you become, it's not just like what it used to be like in person, the 5 people that you spend the most time around, the 5 books you read is who you become. It's now the 25 people that you spend time around online and with you become. So find a community, whether it's a Syndicate or something else, jump in. Mm-hmm. So jumping over the quickfire questions. DSP.
Yes, sir.
A recruiter sitting down with you, somebody that's like just starting off in the recruiting game, never been a recruiter before. What advice would you tell them to win as a recruiter?
Talk to as many people as possible. Same advice I gave before, but really, that's really the most important thing is find ways to talk to as many leaders that are maybe on the market, candidates, because obviously they'll take your call, and learn as much about the industry as possible and their pain points, their desires, frustrations, etc. The more you can learn that, the more you can get a feel for what your clients and prospects want to see in candidates and from recruiters, the better you do. I think the people that are order takers that never take the time to do that when the market slows, they're the ones that are hit most because they're used to order taking. Great in a great economy, doesn't work in a bad economy. Talk to people more than anything else.
Neil, same question, but for people that have been in the game for a while, people that have been recruiters 5, 10, I'm almost 20 years in this game. What advice would you give to somebody like that?
Get back to the basics and to, not to sound like a broken record with David, but they don't. The very first step in sales isn't selling or making a pitch. The very first step in the sales prospect is prospecting. And that is you have to talk to people again. You got to talk to people and get back to sourcing. That's the key thing that people end up not doing. And I've seen unbelievable recruiters in my career. And that's what I used to train people on in the beginning was sourcing, getting leads, doing that before anything. And then once they become successful, they forget that the first step in sales is prospecting.
So true. Back to the basics. Daniel, has there been a book that's had a huge impact on your personal career and success?
There's 2 at different times that I want to bring up for this because it was different times in life and they're both really important for today. When I was 15, my boss gave me a book of search and placement by Larry Nobles and Steve Finkel. And he wrote a little note in there about like how he sees my future. And that literally changed my life. And I always think today, it's so important to give your youngins in your office a book that you feel like not only can teach them a business, but writing that personal note. That gave me the fire and passion of today. Whatever I read in the book, it didn't matter. Everything not only did I absorb, I was like on fire for months after that because the boss took, a moment to say, hey, read this and you can perfect yourself and I want to see your growth. So almost having that first recruiter book kind of changed my life and really built a lot of passion for me, especially from like 2 big major people in the industry. And I highly suggest that book, even though it's so old school, it's still so amazing and applies today. And then the second book that changed my life, like literally in the last year or 2, is when I read The Star Conspiracy is the largest HR tech ad agency that has launched every single HR tech company in America, basically, right? They're amazing. Brett Starr is the CEO, genius, and he came out with a book And, it's basically like everything wrong in brand marketing today, right? And, I have to say it changed my perspective on marketing. And that really is helpful for today, both in the recruiting agency world or software. I think a lot of us are so interested on paid media and pay-per-click and, advertising and how do I get, ROAS, whatever, on advertising spend. But the thing is like, sometimes you are your biggest asset and, you can become that celebrity, and becoming a mini celebrity will give you all the leads and will bring everyone to you. So focusing on your brand, who you are, and making an impact, even if it's in your backyard or local community, that will start spreading. And ever since I read that book, instead of paying on ads and this and that, all I'm doing is stuff in that recruiter community, and it's helped me greatly. So I thought it would be something to add when you asked.
Favorite tech tools? We'll start with Neil.
So, the other two are going to give you better answers because I've been out of it. But I'm going to say this. I love Zapier, and I'm shocked at how many people don't use it. I use it for absolutely everything. Any bit of software that I add on. And Daniel's the king of this. Daniel, really has built, like I said, into his ATS, 20, 30 different tools. But anything that can export out somewhere, even if it's a Google Sheets, Zapier is going to get that into my HubSpot, and it's going to allow me to do a million things with it. So if you don't play with it, log into it, check it out, and check out all the apps that you can integrate with.
Awesome.
I actually want to throw one in there as well. For me, it's going to be Claude.ai for creating content. ChatGPT was great, but man, over the last 6 months, Claude, I just blown them out of the water. So if you want to create really good content, you just have to train the AI persona to actually be able to create content that writes in your voice. In fact, I have an episode on this fantastic podcast about that very same subject. But Claude right now is my number one favorite tool for writing content, and Perplexity.ai for research. So Perplexity and Claude together are a dynamic combo.
Doesn't the word Claude mean like a doofus? Like, really, they don't even care about names anymore? Like, doofus.ai. I don't know.
It makes sense, yeah.
I love Claude. I love Perplexity. Like, I actually had a podcast guest. It was just like, now I use Perplexity for everything instead of Google. And I'm like, what's that? Holy shit.
It's Google on steroids and then take steroids again and then more steroids. It's amazing. Perplexity is well worth it. Well worth it.
So I know you guys talk to so many recruiters. You guys have all been recruiters, which is why I absolutely love you guys. A lot of people are having a hard time right now. How do you guys personally get out of that funk of those hard weeks or those hard months? We'll start with you, Daniel.
It's not easy because it's also that commission sales mentality where you make a bunch of money and then it's slow the next month. And then based on how much money I have in my bank account, that's my emotional persona for the week, right? A lot of people have that. If I have over X amount in my bank, I'm super happy. If I'm below, boom, it affects my emotions. So I think at the end of the day, people have to learn better cash flow and investment in the recruiting business. So if there is a down month, I was okay and there shouldn't be that emotion taking over. Or if they don't accept the job and I lose a place, a lot of emotions are based on money. So I feel like if recruiters get their, cash flow and investments in order, so when you have down months, you aren't as emotional towards it, it does help. And I think that was something I learned in my mid to late 20s,
I would say for me, it's different for everybody else, but I'd say a few things that also helps as well. In addition to, cash flow, I think, and financial management is a key part. Also for mindset, finding ways to ground yourself in something else. So I like to lift heavy. So I like to do squats. So lift heavy, deadlifts, all that. For some folks, religion, right? I've actually kind of recently found my faith again recently. And I've had atheist for many, many years. That's actually helped me significantly over the last, especially the last few months. I think that, and then also community, right? There's a reason why bars do well in recessions and depressions, right? So not say you should go drink your troubles away, but go find a community where you can go and have, an alcohol-free happy hour, right? But just go and talk to other recruiters and share your wins and your struggles. And that helps a lot, just having that community and other people to bounce ideas off of. So community, faith, working out, I think that all those can help ground you.
Neil?
Drugs. No, and besides drugs, and
Might not be drugs.
Let's call them medically approved drugs. Besides drugs, no, it's okay to be in a funk. It's normal. It's okay to be depressed at times. It's normal. Allow yourself that for starters, and don't feel bad that the whole world's falling apart. Know that it's kind of crazy because situations will change, and you're going to look back on that period and say, what the hell was I all in a funk about? And a lot of the things that David said, but I would say community is critical, and not a commercial for the Syndicate, but work with people if you can. Find someone that's in your neighborhood if you're working home alone and ask to work together. I do that often. I have a guy we happen to work together, but he doesn't live far away. So we just do it so we're around each other. And if I am in a funk, which I get in them, just like everybody else. I know you look at influencers and everyone think that life is perfect. It isn't. And that really helps me a great deal.
Well, I want to add one more thing in there as well. What you said, Neil, reminded me of this, so thank you. There's a great quote by William Faulkner, and he says, "I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, I'm inspired at 9 o'clock every morning." So having a routine, and regardless of rain, shine, sick, health, doesn't matter. 9 a.m., you do this. 10 a.m., you do this. And I think when things are falling apart all around you, if you can get a schedule, stick to it, one, you'll work your way out of it, which is great. You'll have some successes, right? And also it gives you a way, something to hold on to, almost like a lifeline, right? So follow that advice. Be inspired.
Before I let you guys go, is there anything that you guys want to share with the listeners? And we'll do a quick round robin. We'll start with Neil first.
I just want to share, get out there and be creative. You have to take advantage of automation any way you can. Whether it's with a company like me, whether it's with someone like Daniel that offers something that's totally different. It's not just using AI, it's using everything. David, I think, should just share a quick picture of the Syndicate when we get to him, and do that. But that's my advice. You have to, because you could be a dinosaur if you don't. You have to be ahead of your clients and your candidates.
Daniel?
I also feel like people just have to get out there a lot more and tell everyone what they do and stop staying at home on the seat sourcing all day. Get out. Go to the country clubs. Go golf. Go work out at a country fancy gym that has rich people that have huge companies. Getting out there and telling everyone what you do will bring you the most successful experience of your life, especially when you're running an agency. Everyone will need you. And I feel like once you get out there and become that mini celebrity, I think you'll see a huge opportunity.
And then for me, join the community, join the Syndicate, right? It's a like-minded community. In fact, here's a quick little screen share. As you can see, it's a beautiful little area. But yeah, right now we're close to 500 members. We're growing every single day. We have fun. And there's tons of training, don't get me wrong. We have agreements, 50 free agreements. We have over 100 forms at this point. Retainer agreements, contingency agreements, free training, kick-ass training here. We have Meme Mountain over here. And so it's a fun place. It's a fun place for learning. It's a good kind of escape. Don't get stuck in here, right? You still need to go out and do your work. That is my advice, is to join the Syndicate, join the community. We'll be there waiting for you.
Like I said, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for coming on. Being a solo recruiter is hard. Being a solo recruiter trying to figure everything out on your own is even harder. When I first started, I ran across an online community that helped me a ton. I begged for some training. I begged for agreements. There were amazing recruiters out there that have turned into friends that were able to help me along the way. And I know that there's other people out there too that are looking for community, looking for a place to grow. So go find your community of people that you can win together with. So for those listening, I want you guys to keep crushing it. We're coming into the tail end of 2024. Whatever you do now is going to set the foundation for 2025. So keep crushing it, guys. Thank you.